Hey friends, it's Ruben with Hi-Fi MIDI. In this video I want to show you how I program strings. Now the subject of virtual strings is too vast for me to cover in a lifetime. String instruments have so many articulations and sounds, and it can be applied to so many styles of music that I would never be able to cover it. But I want to show you the basics of how I program strings. Now I own many string libraries. The one I'm using for this video is LA Scoring Strings Lite 2, which is one of my favorite. It has a very lush and beautiful sound. It sounds great right out of the box. You don't have to do a lot of tweaking to it. And it's very easy to program. So right now I have violin 1, violin 2, viola, and cello, which is your standard quartet setup. You can add as many strings as you want, but for this video, I'm just going to use a standard quartet. I have a piano track already pre-recorded, and I'm going to play a little bit of that for you. This is in 3/4 and 68 beats per minute. It's very romantic sounding. I want the strings to come in halfway through whenever it repeats the chords and the piano gets a little busier. I want the strings to come in very simply, and what I usually do is start off with the lowest note. So I have the lowest instrument in here is going to be the cello. So I'm going to have it sort of replicate the bass line, at least the notes. So I'm going to create a MIDI region here with my pen tool all the way to the end. Then I'm going to click on this. I'm going to audition the notes just to make sure. All right, so let's hear this. I'm going to turn the snap feature on so I could, and I need to fix this setting. I don't want swing. 1. First note's going to be 2 beats long. And then I want to repeat this, so I'm going to copy it, drag it, paste it over here. And we can do the same thing for the next measure. Now this last measure, the chord changes. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to play a G on the octave. right, so let me start working with the dynamics on this. So it's set to modulation. That's controlling the dynamic level. So let me start right here. So I know that in the end I want it to decrescendo, meaning it has to quiet down. So what I'm going to do right here is create a line going down so that the volume can quiet down gradually. Now, as for these parts, I want there to be some shape to it. And don't worry, you're not going to see me do this exact same process for the next instruments. I'm going to do some copying and pasting. So on these notes, these long notes, I like to have a little swell. And this is not going to make too much of a difference, but it's going to make a subtle difference. So I'll do the same here. Make it swell. And then connect it to the last decrescendo. Let's listen to that. I think I like that. Let's go to the next part. So what I want to do is the first thing I work on is the bass instrument, which is the cello in this case. And then the next instrument I work on is the highest, the one with the melody, the one that I want to have the melody. So I'm going to hold down Option and then drag this all the way to the violin part, and it's going to copy it. Now these notes that I've played in the cello part are out of range for the violin. So that's okay though. What I'm going to do is take these notes, which are going to be the basis for my violin rhythm, and I'm going to start dragging it up until I can hear it. Let me turn that snap on. Good. So my first note is a B. I want it to sound I want it to go down from a B. Let's hear that. So those are the notes that's going to play. Now on this part, I'm going to have a little ornament actually on the next part. But so this one I'm going to get rid of those two little notes. So you hear the little ornament in the piano, the little riff. It's going to be something similar to that in rhythm. So you can barely hear that. And then I want this to mimic the piano line. I created a detailed ornament in the piano, but I wanted to have this descending melody. Let's hear how those sound together. I think that's sounding pretty good. Now, viola 1 and viola 2, they often play unison, or they play one octave apart, or they harmonize with each other, usually a third or a sixth. I'm going to experiment with those sounds. I didn't have this pre-planned on how this was going to sound. I'm just going to show you my process and how I start choosing the notes that I want. So I'm going to copy this part and paste it into the violin 2 part. So what I'm going to do now is I don't want them to be in the same register. I want them to be an octave apart. So the violin 2 is going to be lower. Right now it's on B4. I want it on B3. Let's hear that. Now this last note, I don't want them to share the last note, because this is the second interval in the G major chord, and I want this to be the third in the. It's going to create some dissonance. So let's see if it has the effect that I want. Yes, and that's the note that I wanted in there. So I like that. Now the last one is going to be the viola, and this is kind of funny. The violas are like the altos of the string section. Alto is the lower female voice in the choir, and the altos always get the boring part. It's the part that doesn't move that often, and it's boring, but it's very important because it sort of stabilizes the section. It stabilizes the chord by usually giving it a common note. It doesn't move around that often, but the rest of the notes, the bass and the melody, kind of gravitate around it, and it's like the anchor, so to speak. So I'm going to copy the violin 2 part into the viola part, and start editing that. But in order to edit that, I need to know what my notes are in the cello and the violin lines, violin 2 lines, because the viola is going to be somewhere in between there, and it's not going to move that much. So the cello is playing this. The B minor, the A major with the C sharp in the bass to D. Violin is playing. So they both start playing a B. And then they go to this chord. So I want the viola to be somewhere in the middle. So it's gonna start on the F sharp. So one of the rules in voice leading is choosing the proper voices or the proper notes when you're creating harmonies. One of the rules is to avoid doubling thirds. So I don't want that F sharp. So F sharp in the key of D major is a third. I don't want that doubled. So notes that you can double are the root and the fifth. So I'm going to choose one of those. So I'm going to copy this. Now, I don't like how the beginning sounds because it's an open fifth. So I'm actually going to move this down to D to create that third in the B minor chord. Now, I know I said I wanted something in the middle, so I chose the F sharp, but I didn't realize that it would create an open fifth chord, which sounds very hollow. And usually the viola doesn't have the fast movements that the other strings have. So I'm going to keep it simple. Now I don't want it to double the cello part either, so I'm going to go up a little bit on that E. So right now the cello is playing a G, and the violin one's playing the high B, and the violin 2 is playing lower B. So I have my root, my third, and I need my fifth in there, so I'll play the D on the viola. I'm going to get rid of these notes right here. I'll figure something out right now. So in this last chord, I have it's a G major chord, a G major 9 chord. So cello is playing G, Violin 1 is playing A. Violin 2 is playing G. And I need to figure something out for the viola. So I can make violin 2 play the B in the chord, and violin or viola play that G. Or I could make viola play that high B and make the violin 2 play the D. It's all up to me. Now it's on the B, so I'm going to change the violin 2 part to D, which is the 5th of the chord. Not bad, not bad. There's some parts I still need to fix. So I'm gonna add that little transition right here. You can keep this simple. All right, so let's hear it with the piano. Now this is what I did in a very short amount of time. Imagine having more advanced plugins, more advanced tips. Please go to my website, hifimidi.com, where you'll have access to this as well as the files that I created, the MIDI files, and become a free member. Also, I have a course called Virtual Musician Academy and Keyboard Workshop, where you can find more advanced videos in this and become better at programming music using virtual instruments. There's a 7-day risk-free trial. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. Hit that like button, comment, and share. And thanks for watching.